We don't serve premium food to children on charity tickets." The flight attendant's voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. 11-year-old Oliver looked at the moldy sandwich on his tray, eyes wide, but lips sealed. The woman next to him flinched, but said nothing. Rows ahead, a phone began live streaming. He wore a faded hoodie, held an old book about aircraft design, and sat quietly. Too quietly. "Is he flying alone?" someone whispered. "Kids like that shouldn't be in business class," another muttered. No one knew who he was. No one guessed what would happen before landing, and no one saw the storm quietly building in seat 3A. The meal cart rattled softly as it rolled down the aisle. Tray by tray, the flight attendant handed out neatly wrapped sandwiches, plastic containers of salad, and bottled water. When she reached seat 3A, she paused. Her manicured fingers dug into the bottom of the cart where a forgotten sandwich rested, its edges greenish. The lettuce wilted to a brown smear inside the cloudy wrapper. Without a word, Brooke Allen dropped the sandwich onto Oliver's tray. It landed with a dull smack, splattering condensation across the plastic surface. That's mold," the woman in 3B whispered. Brooke didn't flinch. She smiled, tight, professional, insincere. "Children on donated tickets don't get gourmet meals," she said loudly, her eyes never leaving Oliver's pale face. The surrounding rows fell quiet. A man across the aisle glanced up from his phone. A teenage girl in row 2 started recording. The hum of the plane continued, but something colder took its place in the cabin air. Oliver looked down at the sandwich but said nothing. He didn't cry. He didn't frown. He simply folded his hands in his lap and blinked twice. Slow, deliberate. His oversized hoodie, slightly too big for his small frame, bore a faint but clear emblem: Harvard School of Engineering. The fabric was worn, but clean. Brooke turned to the woman in 3B. "If you're concerned, you may request a replacement upon landing." "I'm not the one eating mold," the woman muttered. "I don't make the catering rules," Brooke snapped, then moved on, her smile gone. Across the aisle, a quiet "wow" escaped the lips of a passenger. The girl filming whispered to her stream, "That was a kid. That's disgusting." Still, Oliver didn't speak. His fingers lightly touched the sandwich, then slid the tray away. He opened a weathered book titled Principles of Aerodynamics and began reading as if nothing had happened. But one detail struck a retired pilot 3 rows back. That book was a university-level text, and the kid turned the pages like he understood them. In the back galley, Brooke chuckled, "Charity cases in business class always think they're special." She didn't notice the woman in 3B pulling out her phone, or the man in 4A whispering to his wife, "That hoodie, you saw it too, right?" Or the faint buzz in the air that always comes before a storm. "Young man," the woman in 3B said, her voice soft but firm, "you don't have to eat that." Oliver glanced up, startled not by the words, but by the tone. Genuine concern wrapped in age-worn calm. The woman beside him looked to be in her 70s, silver curls tucked neatly under a navy beret. Her eyes were sharp, unapologetic. "Excuse me, miss," she called out to the retreating attendant. "This sandwich is clearly spoiled." Brooke didn't turn back. "If the child has dietary concerns, he can bring his own food next time." "That's not acceptable," the woman said louder. Around them, more heads turned. A man 2 rows back muttered, "This is getting out of hand." Row 2's teenage girl was still filming, her viewer count ticking upward like a timer. "Y'all seeing this?" she whispered into her mic. "Kid got mold food, and now a grandma's fighting back." The curtain to the front galley rustled. A woman stepped through, tall and composed, her uniform badge reading D. Matthews, cabin supervisor. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her voice smooth like airport announcements, calculated neutrality. "Yes," the older woman answered without hesitation. "This child was served inedible food, and your attendant insulted him in front of everyone." Diane turned to Oliver, expression unreadable. "Sir, are you traveling with a guardian?" The woman in 3B interjected. Does that matter? He's a human being. What happened to basic decency? Diane's smile was thin. Ma'am, our staff follow protocol. If you feel service was inadequate, you may file a formal complaint upon arrival. Someone snorted in disbelief. Phones were now out in almost every direction. The elderly woman turned to Oliver. Don't worry, sweetheart. Some people forget their manners when they think no one's watching. Oliver's mouth twitched, almost a smile. From row 6, a man leaned forward. Balding, deep lines around his eyes, flight cap in his lap. He'd been silent since boarding. Now he spoke. Let me guess. That kid's name is Oliver Whitman, right? The cabin hushed. Diane turned sharply. How do you... I've flown with his mother, he said calmly. Twice. I used to fly Orion 737s before retirement. Diane's color drained just slightly. The girl live streaming nearly dropped her phone, but the man in 6C didn't elaborate. He leaned back, folded his arms, and simply said, Some storms don't announce themselves until they're overhead. May I see your boarding pass again? Diane asked, this time not bothering to lower her voice. Mrs. Harlow, still seated calmly beside Oliver, opened her worn leather purse and handed over the ticket. Business class, seat 3A, purchased under Harlow and Whitman, she said evenly. Brooke snatched the pass and squinted at the details, then tapped her tablet. Her frown deepened. That's odd. It's not showing in the system. That's because you're looking at the in-flight manifest, Mrs. Harlow replied. Not the cleared FAA database. Brooke's eyes narrowed. Are you saying I don't know how to do my job? I'm saying you're looking in the wrong place, she answered coolly. Diane held up a hand, cutting through the tension. Ma'am, we've had several incidents of fraudulent bookings, especially in premium cabins. For security reasons, we need to verify this ticket. I've flown more miles than your manual has pages, Mrs. Harlow said without blinking. But go ahead. The tension in the cabin rose. Passengers whispered. The woman in 3B glared openly. Row 2's livestream girl whispered, They're trying to move the kid. This is so wrong. After a moment, Diane looked up. There appears to be a discrepancy. The system doesn't recognize this boarding pass. That's impossible, Mrs. Harlow murmured, brows furrowing. We'll need you and the child to relocate to economy seating while we sort this out, Diane continued. To where, exactly? Seat 29D and E, Brooke said with a smirk. Rear cabin, near the lavatory. Gasps echoed. Even the captain's door seemed to shiver. Oliver glanced at his tray, still holding the untouched sandwich, and quietly stood. Mrs. Harlow followed, gathering their few belongings. Oliver clutched his book, never looking back. The cabin watched in uncomfortable silence as the boy and his guardian were marched past rows of watching eyes. As they passed the man in 6C, he muttered under his breath, Unreal. Just wait. They were seated beside the humming lavatory door, knees nearly touching the tray tables. Oliver didn't complain. He simply reopened Principles of Aerodynamics and resumed reading. The girl live streaming turned her phone toward her own face. You guys seeing this? He had a business class ticket. They moved him anyway. Back up front, Brooke checked her screen again. This time, something blinked red. A small message flashed. Override code activated. Clearance blocked. External system control detected. She frowned, but she said nothing. The steady hum of the engine was louder back here near the lavatory, but Mrs. Harlow didn't seem to notice. She sat upright, composed, her eyes never leaving the screen of her phone. She tapped once, then twice. A contact appeared. No last name, just Deputy Raynor. She brought the phone to her lips and whispered, It's happening again. No one heard her except Oliver, and he didn't react. He turned another page in his book, circling a diagram in pencil. 3 rows back, in seat 32A, Evan McCall sipped ginger ale with one eye on his screen and one on the boy. He was a senior systems engineer for a cybersecurity firm contracted with Orion Aero Group. His flight had been last minute, a favor for a colleague in Seattle. When the livestream girl's video popped up on his feed, Evan had clicked more out of boredom than concern. Then he saw the sandwich. Then the transfer. Then the boy. Now he was leaning forward, heart racing, the faded hoodie, the book, the unnervingly calm demeanor. It hit him all at once. The kid wasn't just anyone. Evan remembered the Orion Summit in D.C. last spring, a closed-door session about tech reform in aviation. The final speaker had been a child, no more than 10, introduced by the CEO herself. "Oliver Whitman," Evan whispered. "Holy!" He glanced around. No one else seemed to have recognized him yet. Not Brooke, not Diane, not the supervisor who'd barked orders with corporate coldness. Just a child reading quietly by the toilet. Evan turned to his laptop and typed into his secure channel. "Possible ID match. VIP passenger. Confirm Oliver Whitman aboard North Vista 778. Within 30 seconds, a reply. Match confirmed. Maintain discretion. Observer status authorized." He stared at the screen, stunned. Observer status. That only came from corporate intel ops. It meant something big was happening. In front of him, Oliver adjusted his hoodie, revealing the full crest of Harvard engineering stitched near the collar. It looked worn, not for show, but lived in. Mrs. Harlow turned slightly toward Evan, eyes meeting his for half a second. That glance held volumes. Evan closed his laptop slowly and sat back, pulse pounding. Something was unraveling on this flight, something no one else could see yet. And Evan suddenly knew. This wasn't just about a sandwich. Oliver slid his book back into his backpack and replaced it with a slim black tablet. No stickers, no scratches, just a matte surface and a single embossed logo, FAA. He tapped the screen, and the tablet came alive. Charts, documents, and briefings flickered by. Data on flight protocols, crew compliance reports, digital cockpit feedback. The kind of content that didn't belong in the hands of an average passenger, much less a child. Beside him, Mrs. Harlow opened her phone again. No call this time, just a secure messaging app. She typed 5 words. Phase 1 initiated. Confirmed trigger. The message sent with a silent ping, and within seconds, something shifted. Not visibly, but behind the digital walls of North Vista Airways. At the airline's operations hub in Denver, 3 terminals flashed red. A technician frowned. "I've lost telemetry link with Flight 778's in-flight operations. You seeing this?" His colleague squinted at her screen. "Internal comms just went dark. Servers bouncing diagnostics. It's like someone pulled a silent override." Across the country, in a windowless room beneath Dulles International Airport, another screen lit up. A secure terminal displayed. "Surveillance mode. Flight 778 active. Authority code AURI Aero 05R. Initiated by Authorized Inspector Harlow." The operator looked up. "Sir, we've got an active inspection trigger. Corporate grade override. It's live." Back on the plane, none of the passengers knew. Brooke continued chatting with another flight attendant, oblivious to the shift. Diane scrolled through her tablet, unaware her access had been throttled. But Evan, the systems engineer, knew. He'd just received another message through his secure channel. "Surveillance confirmed. Your role. Observe only. Do not interfere. Documentation priority. Level 2. His fingers itched to record, but he followed protocol. Observer meant eyes, not action. Oliver, meanwhile, tapped into a report titled Cabin Staff Incident Trends, North Vista Q3. He read it quietly, brows furrowing. His thumb highlighted 3 lines of text, then bookmarked a section labeled Crew Conduct Escalation Thresholds. Mrs. Harlow didn't speak. She watched the aisle with serene detachment, but her phone buzzed once with a confirmation. FAA observers dispatched. Ground team en route to Gate 9, SFO. A quiet countdown had begun. and no one aboard knew they were being watched. Not by angry passengers, but by federal systems designed to catch what no camera could: abuse of power when no one was supposed to be looking. Oliver locked his tablet and looked out the window. The clouds rolled by slowly, steady, like the plan. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the plane cruised over Nebraska, but there was nothing calm about what was happening in row 18. Dr. Amelia Reyes, a pediatric resident on her way home from a medical conference, had been quietly filming ever since the Moldy sandwich incident. At first, she thought it was just another sad example of bad service. But when Oliver and his guardian were moved to the back of the plane, after showing a valid business class ticket, something snapped. She went live. "Hey folks," she whispered into her mic. "This kid got booted from business class for no reason. I've been watching since takeoff. It's not just bad food, it's targeting." Within minutes, her viewer count shot past 20,000, then 40,000. By the time she replayed the sandwich drop, the stream crossed 100,000. People were angry. Comments exploded across the screen. "That's mold! Report them!" "What airline is this? Why's no one helping that boy? He looks so calm. What's his name?" One comment stood out, buried among the flood. "Wait, is that the kid from the White House STEM event last year?" Another followed seconds later. "I think you're right. He was on TV with the president. Gifted aviation kid?" Amelia paused. "Hold up. What?" A woman 3 rows ahead, clutching a toddler on her lap, gasped. She leaned toward her husband. "I saw that broadcast. That's him, the little genius with the aerospace algorithm. Oliver Whitman." The name hit like lightning. Within moments, someone had pulled up a clip on YouTube. "President honors 10-year-old innovator for aviation breakthrough," thumbnail. Oliver, standing beside the president, holding a model aircraft. Amelia flipped her camera to herself. "Guys, if this is true, they didn't just mistreat a kid. They mistreated a national figure." The stream exploded past 150,000. Screenshots flew across Twitter. TikTok duets began layering commentary. Reddit threads opened. Airline boots gifted child scientist mid-flight. The mother in row 16 started posting to her parenting blog in real time. If they can do this to him, what happens to kids like mine? In seat 32A, Evan received a ping from a coworker. Public stream linked Oliver to White House. Damage spreading fast. "Should we escalate?" He typed back, "Too late. The world's already watching." Up front, Diane noticed the murmurs. Her face tightened. She checked her tablet again, still locked out. Behind her, Brooke whispered, "Why is everyone looking back here?" Diane didn't answer. She couldn't. In the cockpit, Captain Langford frowned at the stream of alerts on his console. His comms tablet flashed red. "Passenger status inquiry, VIP 213B, verify immediately." He tapped the intercom. "Control, this is Flight 778. Requesting status confirmation for VIP code 213B. Passenger, Oliver Whitman. Is this accurate?" The response came fast. "Confirmed. Immediate protocol shift authorized. Cabin staff to defer to onboard handler. Orders pending." Langford turned to his first officer, eyes wide. "We've got a ghost protocol in play." Back in the cabin, Diane was mid-sentence with Brooke when her crew tablet lit up. "Level 4 override. Passenger 3A under federal surveillance. Command transition to onboard handler. Supervisor Matthews, step down." Her jaw dropped. "What the?" Before she could react, Mrs. Harlow stood up. No panic, no hesitation. She walked forward, straight-backed, gaze locked on Diane. "I'll take it from here," she said, voice suddenly different, lower, sharper, command woven into every syllable. Diane stammered, "Ma'am, Sit down." The authority in her tone didn't just suggest experience. It commanded compliance. A second message hit Diane's tablet. "Handler identified. Harlow, Lorraine. Former director, National Security Office." Her legs buckled slightly. Brooke arrived seconds later, trying to whisper, "Something's wrong. People keep looking at the kid. They're saying he's..." Then she saw the alert on Diane's screen. Her mouth moved, but no words came. Diane turned the screen toward her. Brooke read it once, then twice, and dropped like a stone to the floor. Gasps erupted around the cabin. Passengers stood. Phones were everywhere. Mrs. Harlow remained perfectly still. "I need a medical kit for the attendant," she said calmly, even as her phone buzzed with a new message. "Joint Command confirming escalation. Pentagon clearance granted. Cabin protocol lockdown authorized." The captain's voice crackled overhead. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've been asked to enact a temporary shift in onboard procedures. Please remain calm and seated." In the back row, Oliver watched it unfold. Arms folded, tablet off. Evan, the systems engineer, blinked rapidly. "They sent a director," he whispered. He finally understood what was happening and how far the consequences would reach. Brooke came to moments later, seated awkwardly in the jump seat with a cold compress on her forehead. Diane hovered nearby, pale, trying to regain control, but it was slipping away. The captain's voice came over the intercom again, unusually measured. "Cabin crew, please prepare for incident report documentation. FAA liaison will board upon landing. Certain roles are subject to immediate review." Whispers erupted throughout the cabin. A businessman in 5C muttered, "Did he just say the FAA's meeting the plane?" Mrs. Harlow moved toward the front, handing a sealed envelope to the lead flight attendant, who had just emerged from the galley looking confused. "Deliver this to the gate personnel. It's pre-cleared." Diane intercepted it. "What is this?" Mrs. Harlow didn't even look at her. "Termination paperwork." Diane flinched. Brooke blinked up at them. "What do you mean, termination?" From the back of the plane, Oliver rose. He walked slowly, calmly up the aisle as the cabin hushed. Every phone tilted toward him, recording. Even the crying baby in row 17 quieted as he passed. He stopped at the front galley, turned to face the crew, and said only one thing. "People reveal who they are when they think no one important is watching. No more, no less." He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just said it, and it was enough. The words echoed through the pressurized cabin like thunder. A notification beeped on Diane's tablet. She looked down. "Flight Crew Matthews Diane, status suspended. Effective immediately. Crew member Allen, Brooke, status suspended. Effective immediately." Seconds later, a second alert followed. "FAA Officer Sheldon en route to Gate B14. HR Rep, Orion Aero Group, will meet for official briefing." Brooke stared in horror. This is real?" Passengers gasped. A few clapped. One man whispered, "Finally." Mrs. Harlow didn't celebrate. She simply looked at Diane and Brooke, eyes calm. "You weren't just being evaluated on service, you were being evaluated on integrity." Brooke collapsed into her seat, silent. Diane tried to speak, but nothing came out. Oliver returned to his seat near the lavatory. The moment passed, but the silence that followed carried the weight of justice long delayed. Evan received one final message on his secure channel. "Field test, successful, full report to follow." It had all been orchestrated. Not just the recording, not just the reactions. The entire flight had been a stage, and the performance was over. By the time Flight 778 entered descent, the ripple effects had already reached corporate headquarters. At Orion Aero Group's executive offices, 5 time zones away, alerts lit up across internal systems. Red flag protocol, normally reserved for emergencies like hijackings or catastrophic technical failure, was activated. But this time, the crisis wasn't mechanical. It was cultural. A team of analysts had begun parsing through North Vista Airways' internal emails. Within minutes, a pattern emerged. Coded language, thinly veiled biases, outright slurs hidden behind sarcasm and policy speak. One message read, "If we let every hoodie kid sit up front, business class loses its meaning." Another, "Just make sure the poor ones get their moldy carbs and stay quiet." The emails weren't old. They were recent, weeks, even days old. Some from Diane, some from Brooke. others from middle management, HR supervisors, and route coordinators. The audit team flagged 87 messages in under an hour. Back on the plane, Oliver sat quietly, watching the coastlines of California appear beneath the clouds. His tablet vibrated once, an alert from an internal Orion channel, visible only to senior leadership and designated heirs. Audit confirmed. Culture breach level 3. Inheritance directive active. Mrs. Harlow saw the screen and nodded once. She didn't have to say it. Evan, 2 rows back, saw the brief flash of text reflected in the window beside Oliver, and finally understood. Oliver wasn't just the son of Orion's chairwoman. He was the chosen heir, not of assets, not of stock, but of purpose. 2 years ago, Orion's founder, a visionary once called the ethical disruptor of aviation, had written a private directive. His final wish, that leadership of the company passed not to the most experienced, but to the most principled. A new generation, chosen early, trained quietly, tested thoroughly. Oliver was the test, and this flight was the final proof. The email audit was only the beginning. Media outlets had started requesting statements. Civil rights attorneys had already issued formal complaints. FAA representatives would meet the plane on landing, but corporate was already moving. Board members were summoned. Emergency ethics panels convened, and the name on every screen, every document, every headline. Oliver Whitman. A child. A target. A mirror. A quiet passenger holding a moldy sandwich who became the trigger for the most significant aviation reform effort in decades. When Flight 778 touched down at San Francisco International, it wasn't met with the usual chorus of half-hearted claps. It landed in silence, every passenger too stunned by what they'd witnessed, too aware they'd just been part of something far bigger than a delayed flight. Outside the terminal, news vans crowded the curb. Inside, security cordoned off the gate as FAA officials moved in with quiet urgency. But the real storm wasn't on the ground. It was online. By the time the aircraft taxied to gate B14, Twitter had crashed momentarily under the weight of trending hashtags. Who Eyes Oliver had kid that? Owns the sky, respect every passenger. Instagram reels flooded timelines. TikTok exploded with dramatic reenactments. Reddit threads were upvoted into virality. YouTube channels broke down each second of Amelia Reyes's live stream, analyzing body language, airline protocol, and the moment Oliver said his one line. News anchors picked it up within the hour. By the second hour, he was headline news. But it was the third hour that changed everything. Senator Elaine Thompson, chair of the Senate Transportation Committee, took the podium at a hastily arranged press conference in D.C. Her tone was solemn, her voice firm. "This is not about one child on one flight," she began. "This is about how easily dignity becomes optional in systems designed for profit. The story of Oliver Whitman will redefine our travel laws permanently." Reporters shouted questions. She raised one hand. Yes, he is the son of Orion's chairwoman. But more importantly, he is a citizen, a passenger, a child who was failed by a system that should have protected him. That's the part that matters. Back in San Francisco, passengers stepped off Flight 778 and were immediately met by reporters. None gave interviews. Some simply pointed toward the jet bridge and said, "Talk to him." But Oliver said nothing. He walked beside Mrs. Harlow, eyes calm, steps measured, past the flashing bulbs and out into a black SUV waiting at the curb. Inside the vehicle, his tablet buzzed. Orion Media Statement approved. National Education Campaign launch scheduled. Child passenger bill under draft review. Evan, still seated in the terminal, watched from afar as the boy disappeared into the car. He didn't look like a CEO in training. He looked like a kid who just changed the world. On his live stream, a viewer commented, "I don't cry at airline drama, but this gave me hope." The marble hall of the Senate hearing chamber echoed with low murmurs and camera shutters. The crowd was unusually silent, as if aware they were witnessing something historic before it even began. Placards read, "Hearing on Passenger Rights and Equity in Air Travel. Proposal, Flight Dignity Act, FDA 2025. Dozens of aviation executives, lawmakers, and journalists filled the seats. But every eye was on the quiet boy in the front row, dressed in a navy blazer, khakis, and the same worn Harvard hoodie underneath. Beside him sat Mrs. Harlow, composed as ever. When the committee chair called their name, the room held its breath. Oliver didn't rise to speak. Instead, he stood only to walk forward, his footsteps soft on the marble. He placed a sealed binder on the long oak desk, labeled Empirical Evidence, In-Flight Discrimination Metrics, compiled live, Flight 778. He returned to his seat without a word. Senator Thompson opened the binder. The first page contained a breakdown of time-stamped incidents: food denial, seat reassignment, tone of speech analysis, live stream data overlays. But what stunned everyone was the footer. Data compiled and visualized using the OW Equity Index algorithm, Beta. Creator, Oliver Whitman. The senator blinked. He built this? Mrs. Harlow nodded. Murmurs turned to gasps as the committee flipped through pages of color-coded graphs, real-time sentiment analysis, and bias prediction models. It wasn't just a report. It was a system, an AI-powered tool capable of monitoring service behavior, flagging inequity, and producing anonymized feedback streams. "We thought he was just documenting," one aide whispered. "He was measuring," another replied. Later, during the live press conference, Senator Thompson's voice carried conviction. The Flight Dignity Act will mandate anti-bias training, anonymous passenger feedback tools, and quarterly equity audits. Airlines who fail to comply will lose FAA certifications. And the OW Index will be offered to every airline, free of charge, under federal license. The industry had no choice but to fall in line. Southjet, Aerostar, Blue Pacific. Within days, each released public statements announcing full compliance and adoption of the algorithm. News outlets labeled it the Reform Cascade. But for Oliver, none of it was about praise. He declined interviews. He refused TV appearances. He just returned to school the following Monday, where he presented his science fair project on machine ethics and customer service AI and got a blue ribbon. Back in DC, one staffer updated the legislative archive. OW Index, origin, passenger 14B, flight 778. Inside the National Museum of Human Dignity, nestled between exhibits on civil rights milestones and modern justice movements, sat a small glass case. Within it, a molded sandwich, sealed in acrylic, surrounded by a minimalist plaque. Flight 778, the meal that triggered a movement. Donated by OW. Archives. Orion Aero Group visitors paused longer at this case than most others. Not because of its appearance, but because of what it represented. The moment quiet injustice met unexpected resistance. Beside it, a screen played a looped video montage. Live stream clips, Senate hearings, news coverage. It ended with Oliver's lone quote from that fateful day. "People reveal who they are when they think no one important is watching." And then, just before fading to black, "What kind of passenger would you be if no one was filming?" Across the country, schools used the story in ethics courses. Airlines used it in training modules. The phrase, "Moldy sandwich moment," entered everyday language as shorthand for hidden injustice. But Oliver Whitman never appeared in the spotlight again. He returned to his small charter school, took robotics, ran track, laughed with friends, never mentioned the headlines, except once a month. 12 times a year, like clockwork, Oliver booked a commercial flight. Always economy, always under a pseudonym. No press, no entourage, no hoodie this time, just a kid with a backpack, a well-worn copy of Principles of Aerodynamics, and a seat in the middle row, watching, not judging, just observing. The crews never knew he was there. That was the point. At 12 years old, he was already shaping national systems, not through speeches or power, but by presence. Quiet, unassuming presence in the very place where dignity had once failed him. On one such flight, an elderly attendant handed him a meal with a kind smile. "Everything all right, dear?" He nodded. "Perfect, thank you." That sandwich was fresh. Later that night, back in his room, Oliver opened a secure channel on his laptop. Passenger evaluation, Flight 624, all metrics within equity threshold. He smiled and typed one word: pass. Meanwhile, at the museum, another child stood before the glass case. "Why is it here, Mom?" the boy asked. His mother knelt beside him. Because someone once refused to accept that silence was safer than speaking. And because one small act, one moldy sandwich, can change everything.